Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. So today we are going to talk about, actually, I specifically requested this topic today because I felt like my life was just like one unfortunate or negative circumstance after another. And normally I can roll with those punches. You know, that's kind of how life is. It has ups and downs, but sometimes it just like has consistent downs, and it's like this accumulation, this pile up of unfortunate events sometimes, and it just seems a little much. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And Donovan, have you had those situations where you've dealt with like just one after another of just things not going the way you would have liked it to go?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely been instances where things just seem to continuously go wrong. Or I just, another way that people might put it is like, can't catch a break, right? Like I can't feel like I just can't get anything to work right.
Right.
And those situations are really tough because it feels like a huge portion of life is out of control, especially in those moments. You know, in other moments, it feels a little bit more like, cool, if I do this, then this happens. If I do this, then that happens. But when it's just like one thing after another, not going the way that you want it to go, it can really start to mess with that sense of control. And that is, you know, like there's a bunch of studies and stuff that say like sense of control is important for happiness. So it's very easy to see kind of the relationship between like all these things are not going the way I want them. And then like, I don't feel happy about it because it's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to like break through when it just seems like anything that's not in my control is against me? So yeah, I've definitely dealt with that before.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for myself, it kind of goes up and down. I feel like I can generally handle it. It's just kind of, for an example that I would use is just being a business owner. It's kind of like you do have to be a salesperson to some degree, and sales is hard. It's part of business. So it's like, you can't sell yourself, then that's not really a good business, essentially. And it's a matter of like, do you really believe in your product and your service? And if you do, but sometimes in business, yeah, there's people where you get a win, you get a new client, and then sometimes you don't. And actually a lot of times you get a lot of people saying, no, thank you, or I'm not interested, which normally is totally fine getting a lot of those messages. But then recently I had like a slew of people that were like interested. And then, when it came down to a decision of doing it or not, they decided not. I was just like, okay, I know I'm not going to like get them all. I can't help everyone. And, they have to decide what's best for them, of course. But when it's just like one after another and you're just like, what am I doing wrong? Am I a valuable service? And I know I am. Like, I've helped hundreds of people. When you're just getting like one no after another no after another no, and then you're dealing with like the coronavirus, and then you're dealing with like your fence breaking, then you're dealing with like relationship issues, and then you're dealing with like a dog pooping in places where you shouldn't. It's just like a little much sometimes. That's what I'm dealing with. So point is just like, yeah, I'm actually obviously worked up from all these things piling on. In the hindsight, it's not even that like big of a deal. It's really not major struggles, but it's just the accumulation of all these challenges, these hardships, where I'm just kind of trying to right now in the moment, trying to like decompress and breathe and relax and be like, it's okay. It's okay. So, Donovan, do you have any advice for me right now?
Yeah, I definitely have a couple ideas, or at least like things that I would try to do. And I think the most important part, which is just that like you statement, for me, what happens is those things pile up, and then I'm just like head down, like what's going on for so long. By the time I get to the point that you're at, I'm like, I already wasted the whole day. But I think it's like it's important that you're already at the point, like seeing the state. The things that I would think of, so let's see, it's not really that you have so much more than things are not going quite the way you expect or want them to. And so for me, going back to what I was talking about, control, like I would probably step out of my normal routine if there's any space to do so and try to get something that is practically a guaranteed win. Even if it's just something ridiculously small, right? So for me, like sometimes there's like a couple games that I play that I'm good at, the solution to everything. But like sometimes stepping out of like this, like, there's all these things, even for a couple minutes to get something that I feel like I have some control over or have some ability to like do well at. That's helpful for me. Another thing is sometimes just like writing out all the events. Cause like you were saying how it's like, it's just all these little things built up to this like pressure.
Yeah.
So another thing that works for me sometimes is like writing out what each of the things are and then seeing it on paper or just like venting it out that way for me sometimes works in terms of seeing like, okay, like there's some part of my brain that says this is not a big deal and another part that's like, and just seeing like what the list is listed out when it's like dog pooped, this thing's not working, this thing's not working. But then like you get through the list and it's like 6 things and it's like,
Sad. Yeah.
okay, maybe it's like not as rough. But I guess like the overall, I don't know, the higher level thing or the bigger message is like some sort of tactic which will allow you to diffuse some of the pressure that's building up. And that's fairly reliable because as more events happen throughout the day, who knows, you could get very unlucky and have like 3 or 4 more things go on. And it depends on how your day is structured too. But like, if you can find sort of an escape hatch to like get grounded a little bit more, to like step back, to like look at the holistic picture, or to look at like, okay, so for example, you're saying like prospecting wasn't going as planned. Like,
yeah,
cool. Maybe you just take like, and I don't know if you had any more planned, but maybe you just say like, okay, I'm not doing any more of that today. Like, it's not working the way I want. I just need like a day to not do that because there's all this other stuff. So that's like another thing when I was saying like breaking the routine. Sometimes when I feel like all this stuff is piling up, then I'm like, okay, I have my routine and my goals and all my stuff, and like I'm just let some of it go today. Like just like it's an off day. It's different. You know, I'll definitely notice if it's like, wow, I'm doing this like 50% of the time. Then I'll be like, okay, hold on, things are broken. But if it's like once every month, like something like that, then it's like, okay, I will just let this one day like be lighter to emotionally deal with like some of the other unexpected things. Because that's another part of it is you have like plans, you have a structure, you have whatever you're trying to get done. And when these like unfortunate events keep happening,
keep throwing you in the loop.
Yeah, like many of them are unexpected. And that alone, just like having unexpected events introduced into your life in a negative way is stressful. So I think like part of what I would say is like just recognizing that you need a little bit more space for some of these things because they are unexpected. And normally in a normal day when there's 1 or 2, you just like naturally have a little bit more bandwidth to like, okay, cool, I'm just gonna, fine, that's fine. Dog poop on the ground, fine. But when they keep building up and up and up and up, then that bandwidth just gets so small to the point where it's like, okay, maybe, and again, I don't know what your day looks like. I don't know how any of it's structured, but those are kind of some of the things that I was thinking that like I would do if I was in the same circumstance.
Yeah, no, I actually like that idea of just kind of thinking of that release valve of just like changing up that image helped me. And actually what I noticed, the fact that I was kind of just venting right now, like all the stuff and that wasn't even all of it, but I just heard myself as I was venting and I was like, this doesn't even sound that big of a deal. I was like listening to myself and I was venting. And I think the process of venting my stuff to you actually helped release the valve. And now actually I feel okay. Yeah. So that was a valve of release and to some extent of just being like, okay, maybe I just need to hop on the phone with a friend and just like spew out everything that I'm dealing with. Just be like, okay, I'm good. Back to work. Kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good choice in a lot of circumstances when the events, because like in this case, the events we know are like relatively small. And I think when that's the case, like that's what you need, is to find some way to just like vent or step out and be like, okay, these are little things and I don't want to invest in them a huge amount. The only reason I bring it up is if someone is feeling like, and they're actually like big things, then the approach is probably a little bit different. Like, we don't need to go into it. I just wanted to like parse out that distinction.
Right. Yeah. I think actually, reflecting on everything, it was just like, there's probably one of those many things was kind of the bigger thing. And so all these little things that added on just made that big thing seem like those little things were like big things, essentially, because I was dealing with the bigger thing at that time. And so, yeah, just kind of managing and separating out the small versus big, and just stepping back, I think helps put some perspective on things.
Yeah, and as we're talking about that, I'm thinking like, because it's different, right? It's there is two sets of I don't know if problems is the right word, but like two sets of things to focus on. And one is like, here's the emotional state and like how I want to manage. I almost said imagine. How I want to imagine my feelings, but how I want to manage my feelings and like and process them and accept them and work through them. And then there's also the piece of like, what do I have to do to solve whatever these things are? And I feel like those are like two separate tracks, which is to say that like the bigger thing probably has some of this and some of this. There's probably some like, okay, I got to work through the emotion of it. And there's probably some action steps that need to happen. Whereas like some of the smaller things, it's probably more weighted towards like, oh, there's like extra emotional baggage from this bigger thing bleeding into these smaller things and making them feel heavier. Yes. But the actual work that needs to be done, the like solution, problem solving part, is probably pretty small. Right. We'll go back to like the prospecting part, right? Like the solution to that is just do more of it. And you know that somewhere. But like with this emotional part being heavier, it's kind of like clouding that to like this like, it's this like thing.
Endless.
Yeah.
Shit, nobody likes me kind of a thing. Yeah. But in reality, it's not that. It's just that, sometimes it ebbs and flows, and that's kind of how business goes, and it's okay. And it doesn't mean anything about me. I'm super good at my job. I'm incredible. And I have to like remind me, it's not about me. They haven't even worked with me really. So how can they really know? But just kind of like stepping back from that. And I just realized like that bigger thing, like that was triggering heavier emotions along with this other bigger thing. Whereas like the fence thing should be just like such a minor thing that just like, yeah, just get someone to fix it. And that's like all you do. But it just was like the fence was like, so like that Jenga piece or that, what do you call it? Like that building a thing and it just like tips everything over and you're like, oh, I can't handle a fence being broken. Kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Like it's tough too. Like I mean, it does all like I'm talking about like, oh, you just do this and you just do this, and it's like it's so much easier said than done. It's so much easier to say like pick apart the pieces and figure out what you need to do and like work through your emotions and just do it. But like the actual process is really hard.
Right. Yeah. I think whether it's like venting to a friend, just kind of releasing the valve that way, or just writing out all those feelings and just actually looking at on paper. And it's really, the accumulation of everything is really not that bad. Like the broken fence is not the end of the world. It really is not. But in the moment, in these other heightened emotions, it can feel like, oh my God, where you just want to like punch the fence, essentially. Punch the wind that broke the fence, essentially. Yeah.
I mean, you can punch the fence as long as it's the part that's already broken.
True. I could punch the wind. That's really responsible for why the fence broke. That won't hurt me. So, yeah.
But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Just having the pieces identified and knowing which things are contributing to what percent of the like,
Right.
I think helps, at least for me, like as I'm thinking about it retroactively, like I think that would help me a lot in terms of getting my head in the right place.
Mhm.
Because I know when things are not going well for me, it can easily just like, here's this thing, here's this thing, here's this thing, here's this thing. And it's like, I got a paper cut and this is it. This is the absolute maximum. Like, this is the worst thing
Oh my
ever. Life is terrible. Nothing ever goes right. I'm done. This paper cut sucks.
God. Right. Paper cuts hurt. Yeah.
They really do hurt. But anyway, like I think it's just a matter of once you know you can like direct your energy a little bit better into the projects or the unexpected circumstances that need the most, instead of just like, here's 700 anger for this thing that is this big.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just also like realizing if your response to a minor situation is greater than what would be expected on an every day-to-day basis. Obviously, it kind of helps you check in with your emotions on, it's like, it's obviously not just about the fence. It's like there's other things going on. And I remember just like being more accepting of however things are is a good way for me to kind of be like, okay, this is the situation, you know, the fence is not going to unbreak itself. It's just like, this is what I'll have to deal with, and it's okay. It's not that huge of a deal. And even for those bigger things with work or relationships, it isn't the end of the world. And it's like, it is frustrating sometimes and upsetting or depressing occasionally, but it's just like, no, it's okay. It is just part of business, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, this is kind of how it goes. It ebbs and flows, and having more acceptance of it, whether it's good or bad, just being with it, however it is, kind of helps me kind of be like, it's okay. It's okay. And breathe. Yes. So that's one of my tactics.
I think it's important too to note that ebbs and flow, like peace, because that's often something that I forget.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really important to remember that like there will be times in life that like you just get unlucky, and like there are other times where or pieces of life that like what you do does have a big impact, but there are always going to be some pieces that just aren't in your control, and every once in a while they're going to line up in a way that it's like, this didn't work, 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 this didn't work. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like, it's definitely
it doesn't. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, exactly. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I mean, it's an opportunity to look at like, okay, how can I be more effective or efficient in things potentially, but it doesn't mean I'm bad or wrong or anything like that. It's just an opportunity to look. And actually what came to my mind was, I don't know if I told you about the parable, you know, that parable about the king and this too shall pass. Did I ever talk about that? I don't know. That was like a part of the 21-day meditation retreat, or not retreat, the challenge that I did. And there's this parable story about this king who asks, I'm going to butcher this story, so I'm sorry, to Deepak Chopra or whoever like wrote this story. But the gist of the story is that, you know, there's this king that wants like this inscription in this ring, or a ring that has like holds a message, to be only unveiled in the ultimate moments of despair, essentially. And so he has this like people or servants or whoever, like think of like what would be that perfect phrase in that ring to only open in those moments of despair. So they come up with the thing, which is like, this too shall pass. And so there becomes an incident where the king is like being chased, or, you know, he's on the hunt, like he's being hunted by these not so great people. Yes, I'm butchering the story. So he's like in this moment of despair, he's at the edge of the cliff, and they can hear them like coming towards him, and they're going to get him, and he's going to get caught and killed, essentially. So he was like in his ultimate moment of despair. And then he realizes, oh, I got to open the ring. This is the moment that I have to open the ring and read the message, because he hasn't read the message yet. So he opens it up, he reads the message, this too shall pass. And then all of a sudden he hears like the horses and these people that are after him like get lost and like turn in like the sound distance. And so he's like spared. And so he goes back home to his castle and then just celebrates. They're having like this amazing celebration of like, yay, victory, awesome, life is so great and everything. And then that servant who shared the message in the first place, he's like, oh, well, open your ring again. And he was like, why? I don't need to. Things are great right now. Things are awesome. And he's like, yeah, but no, the same principle applies. And so he's like, oh, this too shall pass too. Even moments of greatness, of like wins. Like there are moments where I'm totally like crushing it in life, in my relationship, in my business, and just like everything sometimes. And it's awesome. But even in those moments, I have to realize, oh yeah, that passes too. Like life is always a consecutive field of wins, essentially. Sometimes there's like a slew of losses and a slew of like just unfortunate events. But then there's slews of wins. And sometimes it's like up and down, like 2 for 2 or 5 for 5 or 10 for 10. And then you just really can't really predict these kinds of things, essentially. And you have to, the thing that kind of helps me get through this is just going back to that message, whether I'm in despair or hope and joy, to know that like this too shall pass. This slew of unfortunate pile up events that are not so great and not going the way that I want them to go is going to pass, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I don't think you butchered it at all. I think you got the main points through, and then some stories, some thematic elements. They came across.
Okay, good.
But yeah, no, I think it's a good thing to try to keep in mind. And I do think there's some subset of people, or maybe just past me, it could just be me in the past, but who kind of like have viewed life as this like just constant like uphill, where it's like I work hard, and then when I work hard, it just gets better, and then I work hard and it gets better, and I work hard and it gets better, and like,
yeah,
that's true to a degree, but it doesn't look like this. It looks a lot more like like, and no matter what like work gets done, or I guess like the way that I think about it is like every event or everything that happens to us is like some percent chance and some percent choices and things we've done. And like, it's pretty hard to figure out the percents. I mean, like in certain circumstances you can, but there's always going to be like some mix of it. And keeping that in mind helps during some of the dips. It's like what you were saying, where it's like, it is a good opportunity. That's actually exactly what I was going to say before, is like, it's a good opportunity to revisit what you're doing.
Totally.
But sometimes it just doesn't go your way. I think like getting a new job is perhaps like a good example, where like there is some amount of preparation you can do, and some amount of preparing and like work that you can do to try to get a new job. But when you go interview, like there's nothing, you have no control, you have nothing to say about who else is going to interview.
Sure.
Like, no idea. It could be they could be like the originator of the field who also applies for this position.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so like just remembering, or at least like trying to pay attention to like, here are the things that I have control over. Here are the things that are chance. And like, if there are things in the bucket of control, then like, cool, like you should adjust. But the things that aren't, at some point you just have to accept them as they are. And when it happens a bunch in a row, it's a bummer. It's a long-winded way of just saying like, sometimes it just is what it is. And like what you do is try to find a way to frame it, or just like bear it, or just wait for it to pass.
Right.
I just don't want to discount like, hey, a lot of times there is stuff you can do. A lot of times like you do have some control over it, but again, a lot of stuff you don't.
Right. And I think it's just the process of letting go of what you cannot control, and that, it's not always going to be like that, essentially. Yes, you can control certain elements. You can see what can you do some self-reflection on your actions, your thoughts, and how you can be more effective, but just like know that there are things out of your control, and it's unfortunate sometimes things don't go your way, and to be accepting that sometimes that's life. You don't always get everything you want, but regardless, if you persist in the face of it, it's just like if you're if you want to make a certain amount per month in business or in a relationship, or if you want a certain thing, if you just keep quitting because it's like things don't go your way like the first few times around, but if you keep persisting, maybe you will eventually get to that goal if you do the self-reflection and seeing what it is that I could be doing differently, essentially. And also being kind to yourself and accepting that, yeah, sometimes things don't always go how we want it to.
There's also, as you were talking, I was thinking about one last thing that I think is important, which is I have definitely met people, and I'm sure I've been guilty of this myself, I just haven't seen it, so I don't know, of seeing a series of events or like having one or two bad things happen and then getting in this mindset of like, bad things just keep happening to me. And just like, even when good things like happen, just being like, look at this other bad thing. Like, this is bad too. Mm-hmm. So I think it's another important thing to note of like kind of the mental space that you're in, or like, you know, because if you're seeking it out, whether consciously or subconsciously, like saying like, I'm having a bad day, I'm going to keep having a bad day.
Right.
Like,
it'll be a bad day.
You probably will. Oh, wow, I wish I wasn't so tired. Oh, wow, I wish like this wasn't happening. I wish this wasn't happening. Like, if you dig, you can just keep finding things that suck. Absolutely. So I don't think that's what you're doing.
No. Yeah.
But I do think it's a very easy trap to fall into when a few bad things start happening, and you can go as far as not even seeing the things that are good. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I got a bonus, like whatever, I didn't get the promotion. Like, you know, and just completely missing and not giving fair representation to all the events that are happening in your life. As well as I was also thinking in terms of a timeline, right, where we're saying like there's ebbs and flows. I have definitely been in the presence of people who are like, nothing ever goes my way, ever. And it's like, if you go back through like your life and your history and seek out things that did go your way or things that did work out, there are bound to be examples of that too. So again, I guess all of it's a long-winded way of saying sometimes when it seems like everything is going bad, it may just be a time to try to get a more accurate or realistic representation of what's going on in your life. Because there's definitely been times that I've done it as well, where it's been like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. And somebody will be like, yeah, but what about this cool thing that just happened to you? And I'm like, shut up. This sucks, and this sucks. Like, and I'm the one digging my own hole and making my life like miserable.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And it just kind of reminds me of the like, oh, the things that are not broken. Like we had our AC break a couple weeks ago, but now it's fixed. So that's great. My car is not broken either. So that's something I appreciate. I can get around. So yeah, there are wins. And sometimes you have to like look for those wins a little bit, in a way, and also just not realize that, yeah, there are bad days, there's good days, but it's just like in the end, it's not, every day is not going to be a bad day unless you keep making it bad for yourself in that mindset, essentially.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the things we have control over pretty much all the time. Absolutely. Which is just like, sometimes it's a lot of work to like take an event and just like grind it through your brain and try to like reframe it into something that's like, okay, what is the way that I don't hate this and it doesn't cause me to have a whole meltdown? But that is definitely one of the things that we have a lot of control over all the time.
Right, absolutely. Awesome. Well, that wraps up our show. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
You can check out more content at howtohappy.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos. We've also got a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you can check out. See you next time.